Welcome to the Inspire Slovakia podcast. My name is Frank Petrov. I've built a successful consulting engineers practice, a team of structural and civil engineers in Ireland, and along with other foreign Slovaks across the globe from many countries, we share experiences in order to bring maybe knowledge, a light at the end of the tunnel back home to people in Slovakia, for all those who are seek innovations, how to do things better, how to maybe change the country for a country where the living could be better with the high standards. And it's a great honor for me to introduce to a very special guest today. It's a Father Rory O'Donnell from Newbridge. He is a parish priest in Newbridge, County Kildare in Ireland, and this is also kind of like a special maybe opportunity to record this podcast in a professional studio, because both of us are from Ireland. And that is a little bit different against the other podcasts what we already recorded. So you are very welcome, Rory.
Thank you very much.
How are you? How are you doing?
I'm good. It was raining on the way in, so all is good in the world. You know, it's Ireland, and we expect a little bit of rain now and then. So no, all is good.
It's really great to have you here on
Thanks
the board.
very much.
All these podcasts, all that questions will be maybe tailored to that way that we just try to find why, what, who, and how can help improve life standards and all this maybe mindset back at home in Slovakia. So maybe I will start. Let's go have a look on the history a couple of decades ago. Prior, you started your theology studies. You are a student of politics at UCD College in Dublin.
That's right.
Maybe late 80s. And I'm just wondering, on that time, were former kind of like communist countries, former Soviet Union satellites countries, were those part of your studies on that time, and if so, why?
Yeah, they were very much part of our studies. The fall of communism around Europe, that was the big story on the international stage. So the spark had come from Poland with the beginning of the Lech Wałęsa and the Solidarity Union, and then it began to filter out to the rest of Eastern Europe. And it was, for me, as a student of politics, it was a very exciting time. There were no textbooks. History, as it were, was happening before our eyes. And when we'd go in each day for class, our lecturers and our professors would be saying, gee, did you watch the news last night? So while we were studying politics, the Berlin Wall fell. The whole system in Russia changed. Gorbachev came to power, and then there was the time when there was an attempted coup. So it was a very exciting time. And I suppose we studied Eastern Europe because we were very conscious that these were people who were very close to us. We were very conscious of the European continent. So the peoples of Czechoslovakia, as we knew it then, and Poland and Hungary and Romania, these people were people who were close to us. And I suppose for a long time we had followed the story of communism, and we had some idea of what was happening behind the so-called Iron Curtain. So it was very exciting for us to see the collapse of all of this so quickly, because even everyone always thought that communism would fall at some stage. but we never thought it would fall so quickly and so dramatically. So it was a very exciting time, and the images as well. It was the various revolutions that we saw. That what came to us through the television was powerful, because just as an image in itself, the fall of the Berlin Wall, it was just televisually, it was a great image. We watched people scramble over the wall, and we watched the soldiers just stand by, and we watched citizens hand flowers to soldiers, and people reunited from either side of the Germany and the wall, who have family members who hadn't seen each other in decades. So even visually, it was just it was spectacular, really spectacular.
I can imagine that must be something special. I was 12 at that time.
Okay.
And I couldn't understand what's going on there, but when was happened, and after that day, I feel myself that there is something completely changed. Yeah. Okay. So before we move on, if you're multitasking, please come back to us. Now we have a few questions, and this is first question of those. In spite of all these countries, Soviet Union satellites countries, joining EU, say back to 2004, even a couple of those countries join EU currency, maybe 2007, 8, 9. All these things were pretty good, yeah, but those countries, especially in Central Europe, they are still struggling just to adopt real democracy rules and values. Why this is still happening?
Yeah, I think we have to allow for the fact that for most of the Eastern Europeans, for 50 years, they were governed by a system that they never accepted as their own, that they never trusted, that they never saw as being on their side. For many of the countries, they very much saw the communist system as a foreign imposition, because they knew that it was propped up by the Soviet Union. So, at the time of, when some of the countries, including, as it was, Czechoslovakia at the time, when they tried to adopt a different system, or, when Alexander Dubček, for instance, tried to adopt a slightly different system, they knew that the Soviets, that the Russians were going to call them back in order. So their whole system of governance was something that they didn't trust, that they saw as foreign, and that they saw as something that didn't serve them. And they had that for 50 years. And it's hard to then readapt and all of a sudden accept, well, now the government is our government, and we elect them, and we choose them. It takes time, it takes decades for people to own the system in that way. And I suppose the other problem in some of the former Soviet countries was that, firstly, a lot of the people who came to government after the fall of communism were former communists, and many of them were corrupt. So they replaced one corrupt system with another corrupt system. So again, it was difficult for people to have a sense that this government are here to serve us. So depending on what happened after the fall of communism, and I mean the immediate aftermath of the fall of communism, lots of people had good reason not to trust the government. And even though there's been a lot of improvements since then, it still takes a lot of time to change the mindset, it takes a lot of time to change the mindset. And you see that in many of the former Soviet countries. For instance, I traveled to Croatia a lot. And I always say to people when they go to Croatia, the people are terribly friendly. They will do anything for you, but they won't smile at you. They won't smile at you. Because this is what they got used to during a communist system. The the Irish, we smile and we laugh a lot, you know. And if people don't smile at us, we think, oh, they're not friendly or whatever. But again, it's amazing. 50 years of communism, it leaves its mark. And it will take time to leave that behind.
And maybe if you can tell me a little bit more about, you mentioned ownership. What does it mean exactly? Maybe a couple of more details if you can tell us. What does it mean exactly, just like to own system?
Yeah, I think, again, for many of the Eastern European countries, people had to they had to get used to a system. This was the communist system that didn't work. So there was a lot going on in the black market, and you were trying to milk the system or abuse the system as far as you could. Whereas now that people have the choice in who governs them, that there are free elections, it takes a long time for that mindset to change. You know, if you're used to having to exist in a system where you have to work in a grey area outside what's lawful, maybe, it takes a long time to come back and to for that mindset to change. We had it in Ireland because we had a system that perhaps we didn't see as our own. It was a different system to communism. It was, we had the landlord system, for instance, for a long time, and it just takes decades for people to accept. No, this is my government now, and these are people who are actually here to serve me, and for people to accept that the state and the state apparatus is of the people and for the people. Because under a communist system and other systems, it wasn't that. And it takes a long time for people to accept that.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, that was a really good answer. And I would say it's a really important answer for a lot of people in Slovakia just to hear that. And what kind of measures could be useful, just to implement, or maybe what kind of strategies would be, I would say, even critical just to implement in a country, or maybe just to try to introduce people what is important to change, that we can avoid scenario when, just like populist and arrogant politicians win another general election.
Yeah, I suppose that populism is always a danger, and it's a danger all through history. We've seen it. I always go back to the system that developed in Poland. So the first thing was this trade union, but the trade union was called Solidarność. And I think that was hugely significant, because what were they saying? What was the alternative system was saying? What we need to have is a system where we have a greater sense of solidarity among each other, rather than a system of them and us. Because again, in communism, communism was based on a system that needed to have them and us. So there was the working class and the business class, and then there was there was the communist East, and there was the capitalist West. So that system depended on a lack of solidarity. So it was an extraordinary creative thing that happened in Poland at that time, to recognise that what works for society is a sense of, dare I say it, brotherhood or sisterhood, rather than seeing people as the other, rather than a them and us situation. And the more we have that sense of solidarity, the better that is for society. So to a certain extent, that's at the basis of the whole European project. There are very good things about the European project. There are perhaps doubtful things about the European project, but the greatest benefit is that sense of solidarity. So, for instance, when the Berlin Wall fell, and when Germany when West Germany took on East Germany, it could have very easily happened that it could have destroyed Europe, because Germany, in lots of ways, was the power economy of the EEC, as it was at the time, the European Economic Community. And the other European countries could have said, "This is bad for us. If Germany is united, it's bad for us." Because the resources that Germany are putting towards the West, they're now going to be putting those resources towards East Germany and reuniting the country and bringing the East Germany back up to a certain standard. But that wasn't the understanding at the time. There was a general happiness for the Germans that at last their country had been united, and a sense that they were coming to join the family of the European continent. So that sense of solidarity is very important, because populism and that bad nationalism, not all nationalism is bad, but the bad form of nationalism is always the form that emphasizes them and us. So for people in Slovakia, and I don't hope I'm not sounding patronizing, but I would say always avoid a politic that emphasizes them and us, rather than a politic that is based on solidarity and a sense of a shared country, shared state, shared vision. And that, that expression we have in England, or in English, that the tide that lifts our boat will lift all boats. So that sense of solidarity, very, very important.
Yeah, and what do you think? Just this is my own experience. If we are traveling back home, say for a week or two, maybe once, maximum twice per year, I'm just, in my point of view, what might be another driver that might help is just like try to bring that kind of friendly, smiling mentality, say from Ireland back to Slovakia. Just because all these things what you are talking about is maybe just to have a few really powerful leaders, but not just like dictators, but just like true leaders who want change the country, make the country better. But there are not that kind of leaders, just only few of them, and even those are, I don't know, maybe two of them, they are really tight, just like, because all that kind of like current, environment in that country, it's very difficult. So therefore I'm just thinking, instead of to have maybe two powerful leaders, if we will have maybe definitely many more leaders, maybe less powerful, but it will be just like almost every region of country, and just to try pass this message about this nice friendly mentality. And ideally, Ireland is, I would say, in my experience, when I come to Ireland 20 years ago, that was something what I saw straight away, even at the airport when I landed. It was something which was hit my eyes, hit my ears. It was, I felt everywhere, So therefore, I'm just thinking that might be also some way, if there will be any chance that we can, ideally, Control C, Control V, job done.
Yeah, in the West, we don't have a perfect system. In Ireland, we don't have a perfect system. We have an awful lot to learn from the countries of Eastern Europe. So Slovakia, as they come into the EU, it's not that they're coming in with empty hands. They've a lot to teach us. And they've a lot to teach us, I think, when it comes to culture and being grateful for your own culture. Not often countries are a little bit, peoples are a little bit shy about what's native to them. So one of the criticisms, I suppose, I'd have of what's happening in Ireland is that we've lost a sense of our culture, that as a society we're perhaps overly Americanized, even to the extent that a lot of the kids in school have this quasi-American accent that they pick up from watching Friends or a lot of those American programs. Eastern Europe brings a lot to the table, and they need to be conscious of that. That they have a strong sense of their culture. They have a strong sense of customs and what has survived communism. So I think for Eastern Europe they have to be conscious of that. The Irish outlook, it is a little bit sunny. It's unusual because we've such grey skies, and yet there is that optimism about Irish people, wherever it comes from. I don't know, but we do have that sense of optimism. And again, I always think that because of the communist system, people from Eastern Europe lack that sense of optimism. So even understanding for all of us that we need to change our mindset and adjust our mindset, and that's important. That's important, but it's as important for us as Irish people as it, and for people in the west of Europe as it is for people in the east of Europe. But I love to travel in Eastern Europe because again I see there's a very strong sense of culture, and that sense of culture is what brought them through communist times. So, for instance, not too long ago, I was in Krakow. I've been there lots of times. And despite all the attempts to destroy what was uniquely Polish, the Soviet attempt, the German attempt, the Soviet attempt, the Polish culture shines through. And it's a very rich thing. And it's the same for so much of Eastern Europe as well. So Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Poland, they are bringing a lot to the table. They don't come with empty hands. They're not only coming to Europe to receive, they have a lot to give. I worked for a while with a Romanian priest. And again, it was great when it came to Christmas to see what their customs were. And in fact, I felt a little bit impoverished because when they'd ask, what are the Irish customs for Christmas? And yet I knew that a lot of our Irish customs had been invented by Coca-Cola, So Eastern Europe has a lot to give, and it needs to realise that those countries are bringing a lot to the table.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that we can learn a lot from each other. Yeah, just like before we will move on to last few questions. If you are multitasking, please come back to us. Who do you think is the right kind of like type of the leaders, or maybe organizations, probably non-profit organizations, or those people might be just purely Slovakian nationality, or there could be even some foreign nationality, because at this stage, say 35 years after Berlin Wall fall, there is plenty of families which are just like the parents, the husband and wife are different nationalities. What do you think, who will be kind of like the best ideal kind of like key leaders to bring to all these ideas to Slovakia?
Okay, so I think for any country it's important to invest in youth, because young people are naturally optimistic. They're innovative. They're creative. It comes with youth. So we need to invest in youth. Absolutely, it's very important. There's a reason that it's always young men and now young women who fight wars. That is a good thing or a bad thing, but it's because they have that sense of action and doing things right. So I think that's very important, that we encourage young leaders. And after that, people who have that gift for bringing others together. for uniting. They're the values that we need, because again, we've seen all throughout history, that the great demagogues have been the people who have, as I said at the start, emphasized them and us. We want leaders who will unite rather than leaders who will divide. And I suppose the other very important thing is that, again, when we look at Eastern Europe managed to throw off communism because so many of the people who led were idealists. So the Velvet Revolution with Václav Havel, he was a man of culture, and he was an idealist too, someone who wanted to put, it wasn't about putting himself first, it was about putting his country first. We saw the same in Poland, we saw it in Hungary, we saw it in Romania, that the people who were there initially were people who were idealists, people who loved their country, but they were idealists. And they're the people we need to encourage. They're the people we need to allow to come to the top.
Yeah, and just completely forgotten about one story you mentioned when we met last time in a church, and also when we during that journey here to the studio. And that story was about the letters from Václav Havel.
Yes, indeed.
To Olga, if you can tell us something about this.
Yeah, so when I was studying politics, I studied in University College Dublin, and one of the lecturers, his name was, I can't remember his first name now, Brendan Purcell. And Brendan Purcell lectured us in philosophy and in politics. There's a huge crossover between the two disciplines. And I remember him introducing us to this little-known playwright from, as it was at the time, Czechoslovakia. And he spoke about the book that had been printed of the letters he wrote to his wife while he was in prison. And the book was called Letters to Olga. And as I say, it was by this man. We never heard of Václav Havel, never heard of him before. And the particular point that I remember from it was that Havel had signed something that the communists asked him to sign, that meant that if he got out of prison, he'd basically behave himself and be a good boy. And he was out for so many months, and then he chose to go back to prison because he couldn't live with the guilt of that. So even though the prison system was harsh and designed to break people, he found that the guilt he had being outside was breaking him far more than the prison system. And this was what came through, because letters to Olga, a lot of what he was doing was apologising to his wife because he had chosen to go back to prison. And so in the book and in the letters he was writing to Olga, he was explaining what was in his heart and how he very much would have loved to have been out there with her, and yet he wouldn't have been able to live with the guilt of it, So it's a wonderful, wonderful story.
Yeah, and you studied those letters even prior that Berlin Wall fall.
I think it was just about a year before the wall fell. I think the Velvet Revolution was 89, was it?
Yeah, it was November 89.
November 89. And I think it was just before that.
And how is that possible that those letters just was able to get from behind the iron curtain,
Yeah, I think there was an interest in the literature that was coming from behind the Iron Curtain, because there was a sense, like Solzhenitsyn, and there was a sense that there was great wisdom in what was coming, and here were people who were trying to survive, and so on the West, there was a sense of trying to encourage everything that was happening behind the Iron Curtain, that was trying to what would you say, to build a culture that was other than the communist culture. So we were very conscious of literature and the plays and everything that was coming from Eastern Europe at the time, because it was coming from a place of great suffering and great difficulty, and it was good stuff. It was good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I have just last question, because time is running here, and if I will come back to this original questions, there is last thing is missing. How all these strategies, what we already discussed, what do you think? What could be the best way implement those strategies into the real life? Do you think that kind of say podcast, what we are recording, to try to share experiences, or do networking of youth people, and all this, or do you have?
I think any kind of discussion like this is good. I think anything that holds a mirror up to ourselves is good, and often that mirror has to come from outside. So, if it's the Slovak diaspora who are seeing other cultures and other societies, and they're the ones who are lifting up the mirror to people back at home, that's all a good thing. That's a positive thing. And as I say, the encouragement and investment in young people is very, very important. I think it's very important anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Rory. It was a great honor to have you here in this studio and in this podcast. And maybe if you can pass last maybe message to our listeners, maybe your idea what could be. I'm sure it will be very much appreciated back in home in Slovakia.
Yeah. Well, look, I suppose it comes from my Christian faith and from my Irishness to say that hope springs eternal, and that we should never lose hope. We're still in the Easter season here, and the great story of Easter is that there is always hope, that life comes from death itself. So I would say to people, avoid that tendency to get lost in negativity and in a criticism that goes nowhere. There's always hope for change. There's always hope for something different. So people, we need to hold on to hope always.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rory. If you are like this podcast, please hit the button, give us any comments, likes, or it will be very helpful. Any feedback on our email, studio@inspirume.sk.
I won't try and pronounce that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Frankie. It was great talking to you, and hello to everyone in Slovakia.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.